Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
Joining me right now is Sound Income Strategies founder and CEO David Scranton.
They've created a new type of inflation. And although markets have always been an emotional place, they seem to be even more of an emotional place these days.
Jeffrey Small, market watcher, is with me.
Stock market dynamic is getting ready to significantly change.
So let's bring in our co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services and also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store. Right now, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store in Melbourne, Florida. He's also author of the Amazon best-selling book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. Jeff, great to have you back, and it was great to see that last weekend. You got to spend some time in your cabin in North Carolina, and the girls got to experience some snow, something they don't get in Florida, right?
They did. They got the snowboard for the first time, Dave, and they were like champs. After an hour lesson, they were running down the mountain at 30 miles an hour.
I love it. I love it. And we also want to take this opportunity to bring in a good friend of mine and Jeff's, and a new friend of the income generation who doesn't get to experience any snow, and that's Joann Regan, president of Financial Security Group, a retirement income store located in Glendale, Arizona. And Joann's been in business for over 20 years. She's the president of FSG Tax Advisors and FSG of Nevada. Joann, thanks so much for being here with us to answer some of our tax questions on the income generation.
Well, thank you for having me, Dave. And hi, Jeff. How are you as well? I'm glad to be here and glad to be able to assist in any way that I can.
Corporate rates are, going to be an outlier here in terms of how it affects stock prices, how it affects the core viewership of the income generation. So, should folks be looking at locking in capital gains in 2021 versus 2022 because the threat of capital gains could increase next year? Joann?
Yes, they are definitely looking at increasing them. And I definitely think that, if you have some capital gains that you want to pay at the lower rate right now, that this would probably be a good time to do that. It is going to be an issue. There's some other things that are going to be coming down the pike, it looks like, that will affect capital gains with regard to estate planning as well, which we'll get into later. But all of that is definitely something that the average taxpayer should be looking at for sure.
When we incentivize companies to pay lower tax offshore as opposed to at home domestically, meaning rates are cheaper offshore than they are here tax-wise for big corporations, what happens? What do you think is going to happen when that occurs again?
Well, obviously, again, we're going to see lower employment because if they're, going offshore to do things or trying to bring it back, no matter which direction they go, there's going to be ramifications of that no matter how you do it. But with the proposals to try to raise, a lot of the different things like capital gains and all of that, these companies are going to have to try to figure out a way to stay in business. They're already being affected by the pandemic, and there's always a lot of ramifications to what's going on. How are they going to be able to do this? Is it going to be because they're taking away benefits? Are they going to, try to do away with some of their employees? Are they going to try to offshore things? What's going to happen? There has to be a way to make this work, and they're going to figure it out. They always learn how to circumvent it no matter what. It doesn't work to target one group to serve another group. It never works.
Some great words of wisdom, Joann. I really appreciate your expertise. As usual, now it's time to bring back in my co-host, Jeff Small, as well as our next guest, a very good friend of both mine and Jeff's, as well as a good friend of the income generation, Matthew Johnson, president of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income store located in Iowa. Matthew is the host of the radio show, The Capitalized Life and Retirement Show, and it airs on Saturday on KGLO AM 1300. You can also follow Matthew on his YouTube channel, The Capitalized Life. Matthew, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Investors on the right side of the political spectrum are more nervous than ever before about economics, the markets, the country's future progression financially. What are you telling your customers today to calm their nerves and to settle them down? Because a lot of them are very nervous.
Well, they are. I would totally agree with that. One of the things that I think we have to understand, and it just plain and simple, the stock market is very unpredictable. It's always been unpredictable. It always will be. It's a ride that you pay for, and you don't know where it's going to end up. You don't know if it's going to be a fun ride or a scary ride, right? You don't even know if you're going to survive the ride. And so when it comes to investing, I think that there's a lot to be said about taking and really paying attention to where you are and what your goals are, and making certain that you're always implementing some control into your portfolio. And what I mean by control is if you can start to shift maybe from those large cap stocks into value stocks, if you can start to implement a little bit of fixed income where now you've got more contractual measures within your portfolio so that you're getting paid regardless of, really what's going on outside of default. Those things help to kind of calm the nerves of people and give them a little bit more of a peace of mind, I think, which is really important in today's society.
It looks like the Democrats want to be super dovish and expand the stimulus to no ends to support American businesses, which can be a good thing. But the Republicans are going to be more hawkish. Where do your clients stand today? Do they need stimulus? How is Corona impacting them? How is it impacting the heart of the country there in the Corn Belt?
Well, the reality is that you're absolutely correct. There are so many of my clients that are really super concerned with all the printing of money. It's kind of like, I guess we've got a checkbook, so there must be money in the bank. President Biden just came out with another $1.9 trillion stimulus program. So on one hand, that kind of helps to ease the mind of certain investors and says, well, the government's always going to keep us afloat. But on the flip side of the coin, we still have plenty of conservatives that are looking at this and saying, if this was our own money, our own household, we'd be in jail by now. So I think one of the biggest factors is going to be inflation. And remember, inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. And inflation takes a while. So I think many of my clients who are that baby boomer generation are saying, this is going to start affecting us the worst when we're the most vulnerable, when we're later on in our retirement years. And then on the flip side of that coin is going to be the taxation. Is there the possibility the taxes are going to go up for us? And remember that the taxes increasing always stymie the economy in some respect, because if you're going to be taking money from your IRAs and you're going to be taxed at a higher level, now you're going to be more just really more reluctant to take out more money than you really need to because you don't want to be paying those taxes.
You are exactly right, MJ. Janet Yellen just said recently, hey, we need to borrow as much as possible while rates are low, and we'll worry about paying that later. That's kind of a ridiculous attitude, don't you think?
It really is. It's quite irresponsible, I think, in many respects, because it's just indebting future generations. And there's always going to be a consequence to some extent. It can't go on forever. Somebody's going to have to pay the piper.
Matthew, I love the optimism. Thanks so much for joining us today. And you stay with us, because coming up after the break, we're going to recap today's show and share some final thoughts that you need to know if you want to secure your retirement.